Welcome to the Weird Octopus Podcast, a series of conversations with humans who showed up before there was a map. I'm Perry, the founder of the Octopus Movement, and I believe nonlinear thinking is not just a way of creating possibilities. I think it's a way of being in the world. Each week, I speak with more three or more founding members of our global human mycelium to explore who they are, why they think differently, and how they're shaping a future that cannot be built in straight lines. Today, I'm very excited to have Mario Hernandez here in the room with me. Mario is a new founding member. Mario, welcome to the Weird Octopus Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Perry. Happy to be here.
And welcome to the Octopus Movement. Boy, things went fast with us, right? We had our first conversation. We talked about all kinds of stuff. And here we are. You're now in the Weird Octopus podcast. If I would have told you a month ago, you would have said, what would I do in a Weird Octopus podcast, right?
Oh, absolutely. No, I'm glad how things move quickly between aligned individuals. And again, I've been having a very good time already meeting other incredible founding members within this week also. So thanks for coming into my life, my friend.
Yay, I like that. And before we go to the most important question, let me start here. What has been the biggest mental challenge of your life? To just open all the doors at once.
That's, yeah, it's a question I was, I think about quite deeply just because there's so many different stages in your life. And each one marks you, each one just forms your path. But one, I guess, um, I'd say was the most significant was after my first exit. I always thought, generally speaking, the greatest challenges come in when you're building, or what you want to build, how you're going to be defined by what you build, and so forth. And my inflection point really did come in after having that first exit itself, where the questions really became as to what that version of success was, what it meant for myself, the lack of fulfillment that came from it as well, just because of the mindset that I had when I built the company itself. And it was incredible that the difficulties weren't, and naturally the challenges lie when you're creating a venture and so forth. But the real difficulties for me came after that version of success, of that monetary success, was kind of a lack of identity, lack of passion as to what I was going to be building next. And it took me on a journey for many months to be able to figure that out. And fortunately, it got me on the path these last 10, 13 years or so, that I very much enjoyed, and I found fulfillment because of the questions that I went through, after that specific stage in life.
Okay, so Mario, you need to help me and the listeners with. I know what an exit is, but I can imagine that there are some people listening to us thinking now, what the hell is he talking about? What is this? It's success. It's an exit. What is an exit? And what happened there? What did you sell?
So, in the world of startups, that exit is that moment that many strive for. It's that moment that you get to sell your company. Generally speaking, it's a large acquisition that occurs. And in the world of entrepreneurship, it's one of those moments that you believe is going to be one of the most defining moments of your life, because you're working so hard after having built up the vision, see it grow through the success of whether it's revenue and market share and all the effort that you place into it and so forth. And then once you reach that moment of actually having the opportunity to sell, and create a significant amount of wealth for yourself from that acquisition process itself, it's very much a defining moment. And now, once you go through it, it sounds, and I joked around about this with a lot of my friends, it sounds like privileged problems, because it is a very uh, momentous moment in your life, let's say. But nevertheless, for myself, that fulfillment just didn't come because of that monetary basis. And I built that first company with the wrong strategies or the wrong intentions in mind. And I had to be very introspective about that, to not make the same mistakes over and over again. And more so now as a father, where I want to make sure that my children, if they ever decide to become entrepreneurs, wherever they decide to do in life, do it with very different reasons to what I built out in the very beginning anyway, straight out of college.
What was the first reason? What was the mistake? Was the reason to get this exit and to make as much money as possible as fast as possible? Was that the mistake?
That, absolutely. It was very much just monetary driven. Did not care really about the industry, the technology, uh, the business itself. It's just very much driven by a ambition to be able to obtain a significant, let's say, monetary goal and so forth. And so, whilst you might be able to achieve that, it sounds cliche, let's say, but you are losing such quality time of your life, and you're losing yourself within that also. That after, for in my case, it was 2.5 years that was built out, and we talk about burnout a lot in various different industries, and I feel that there's many definitions to burnout itself. A lot of them seem to focus on workload, uh, amount of work, and so forth. I reached burnout, but out of misalignment. And so that's the type of burnout that I felt. I was completely misaligned of identity, who I am, who I was becoming, where I was going, lack of relationships, destroyed relationships, and so forth because of that tunnel vision that I was completely in. And
Hmm.
so that was a significant moment, significant challenge that I had to go through, and very much shaped my entire career and just overall being, I'd say.
Of course, I'm going to go to the question, what makes you an octopus, and what is your nonlinear thinking? But before I go there, um, this already triggers so much curiosity with me, Mario. So if we can stay a little bit longer here, because I'm wondering, uh, in retrospective, I understand what you're saying, right? When you look back, like, I should have done that differently. And how interesting. Then you get your exit, you sell your company. That was the goal, and then you reach your goal, and you're like, what the fuck? Is this is not what I signed up for? Um, what happened? And I will ask you, I will tell you why I asked this question, but I'm curious about after the exit, what happened to you? What is you? And what happened to your surroundings? Because I guess doing a proper exit changes the surrounding and it doesn't change you. It's the same thing. And I had some conversations with people about this, even with the billionaire, that my homelessness experience is aligned in a way. It's not completely, of course, but something happens within you, but something happens especially with the people around you. So what happened after your exit? Was it did everything changes around you that you thought, oh God, now everybody wants money from me. Now everybody wants me to be their investor. Now everyone wants to be in. What happened? How did that change you? And how did you deal with that?
It's you definitely. It's such an interesting question that you make. I'm not 100% sure. Obviously, you do find a lot of individuals that just see you now as an investor, somebody that can just all of a sudden, I don't know, pour capital, let's say, on absolutely everything. Some relationships do become transactional, or it just comes to light. And that is a tough moment to witness and realize. I would also say, and this doesn't apply to every founder, naturally, I will just speak this about myself, that you get on this change of lens anyway, and all of a sudden you're asking yourself, do I have, let's say, these impenetrable, let's say, powers? You kind of enter this egocentric version of yourself because you achieve something that in reality is quite difficult and so forth, and everybody's just either congratulating you, applauding you, and so forth, that you kind of enter that mindset. And that can also be quite dangerous because then you start resonating potentially with circles, relationships, and so forth that you might have otherwise avoided, otherwise might not have been aligned with. And because you're in that that lens, that blurred vision for some time, you start making potentially wrong decisions. And that occurred to me. So I was definitely in circles that I started to realize, well, this isn't the room that I should be in, or I don't feel as comfortable in, and so forth. But again, it took me some time to be able to actually step back from that and start realizing, hey, where am I going? What am I really doing? Who am I with? And what do my next years really look like? And so fortunately, that's also in terms of circles. I like to spend a lot of my time also with post-exited founders, just to understand their current stage in life, what they're thinking, what they're going through, and so forth. And you start realizing that, again, you're not isolated in this type of conversation or thinking. It's much more common than we think anyway.
Are you now addicted, Mario? Because you did it twice. So the first time I was like, oh shit, that wasn't that was that didn't go as I wanted it to go. And then you were able to do it again. So did the second exit gave you what you wished for, what you were hoping for, and are you now addicted? Like, hey, let's do number 3 and 4.
So I would say I'm positively addicted. I've gone through my rehab, and the reason that I mentioned is I definitely went now in a road towards impact, and I believe that I live that on a daily basis. The ventures that I associate myself with are completely driven by impact, not as a add-on or a small, let's say, a small feature. They're very much like the core eccentric value within what they're building. And so, more than just creating a new startup myself and going through that wave, I love surrounding myself around other founders that want to be able to reach that process, but with impact very much involved and very much as a core part of who they are. And so I'm right now co-founding with another individual. Her name's Kendra, and she's building an AI super agent for the nonprofit sector. And I love that her passion isn't towards that monetary exit. She's looking at the exit in the number of lives that are actually changed, the number of causes that are actually going to be benefited from what she's building out. And so I'm addicted to that exit. But what does that exit look like now is very different to what it was 15 years ago.
And here you are doing a podcast, Mario, sharing this information about everything you've been through. That will create some attention, right? People will be knocking on your door. Mario, I want to do an exit. How do I do that? How can I be involved with you? Are you open for these kind of things, or are you being very careful in how to bring the network to yourself? I know you're active on LinkedIn. You have a lot of followers there. You're very easy how do I say that? It's easy to connect with you. In my experience, it's fun to hang out with you. It's fun to have nice conversations. How do you do that? Because maybe everyone wants to talk to Mario, because so many people do want to have an exit if they're founders, and just a little will actually have the exit. So how available are you? This is not a this is not like, hey, I'm here, coming. But also my curiosity, how does that work? How do you protect yourself?
No, I appreciate that. I like to make myself available. And I appreciate your kind words, Perry. I like having conversations. I love finding new individuals that are breaking through problems and finding solutions and so forth. I am just a little more selective now, where again, I want to dive in, let's say, into the personality of that founder. What is it that's driving them, and making sure that I don't see myself 15 years ago, where again, it's just kind of like that monetary process, or they're building out a feature because it's the next wave, and they're just seeing a quick opportunity and so forth. I really do want to be around those founders that have this innate need to see their solution making a positive impact around themselves. And so when they see that, that's somebody that I'm absolutely open to working with, wanting to understand why they're doing it, where they're going, how fast they're moving, and so forth. And it's just so addicting as well, because you get to see these different, let's say, methodologies, strategies, mindsets that I continuously learn from. I think it's a beautiful thing to always be a mentor and always be mentored. Doesn't matter your age, doesn't matter where you are, stage in life, success, whatever you want to call it. you're always going to be learning from someone, right? And so these founders always teach me as well, and I absolutely love that. But they have to have a few of those qualities where we're saying, okay, let's continue building something because it's meaningful. It's meaningful to the world around us and so forth. And it doesn't have to be completely just altruistic or just philanthropic. We don't have to be closed-minded in that regard, but that it ultimately does have a social, planetary, whatever we want to name it, benefit attached to that solution.
How are you at home, Mario, at the breakfast table? So you have a child. How many kids do you have? One,
That too. Yeah.
two. How old are you?
I'm 38 myself.
You're 38. You have
Yeah.
two kids, and here's Mario at the breakfast table. What happens there? Uh, What kind of dad are you?
So this is a conversation I love having with my wife. We are becoming more and more intentional of leaving work and the work hours, wanting to disconnect from our cell phones so that we can just be very present with our children. We were having this conversation actually this weekend, how that time flies by. So we have a 4-month-old baby girl, and our son is already 3.5 years old. And again, time does fly by when you're a father. And so now that we're enjoying those moments at the breakfast table, again, I want us to be there, like playing music. I'm making pancakes for the kids. Just get to see them running around and just kind of be very present, because I'm still at fault that sometimes you hear the ring on the cell phone and you want to check the email and you're seeing what's up, etc. And I'll be very honest. Sometimes my wife catches me and she's like, gives me the look, like, "Hey, we talked
The
about this."
look? Hey, does your
The
wife also give you the look? That's interesting.
the famous look. It's like, pay attention. And so, I'm not perfect. I'm not gonna, pretend to say that I never pick up my cell phone anymore and I'm 100% present, etc. No, but I am intentional in understanding that I want to do that, and it starts very much like you mentioned in the mornings. And so, little by little, that's something that I want to just start putting away, making sure that we're intentional at the dinner table when the kids are older. Anyway, it's like having the cell phone basket. Like, everybody, put your devices in here. We're just going to have conversations. Bring something new to the table, a story, a news article, etc. that we can discuss and converse. But yeah, it's just it starts being present, right? And you have to be intentional about it, or else you just kind of forget. And again, I've been at fault at that many times.
You've been there where, it consumes everything, the work we do. Um, what makes you an octopus, Mario? Because we talked about nonlinear thinking, the octopus movement. You were like, hey, that resonates with me. What makes you a nonlinear thinker?
So yeah, when I met you, I absolutely loved the movement. For myself, we tend to focus so much on specialities, right? Specializing on something. That's the way education works. We go into college, etc. Here's my degree. I focus on X. My degree was business administration and so forth. And generally speaking, those experts within their industries are just that. They're incredible experts. Now, I've been fortunate enough, and I guess I was always nervous about it too, kind of that imposter syndrome. I was never an expert within my own field. Every enterprise that I've built, I've never been the expert whatsoever, and it's also very intimidating. But that also provides you an incredible unfair advantage. So being an octopi is, I refuse to believe that intelligence lives within a single discipline. I believe that we can find pattern recognition across industries. And then you come into those industries with a different perspective. So I've worked alongside with startups, VCs, private equity, etc. And then I went into the world of nonprofits. And I started to realize incredible parallels between startups and nonprofits and how one can actually learn from the other completely. Now, when I was speaking to individuals of the nonprofit industry, they've been there for 20, 30 years. And, well, you're a startup guy. What are you doing here? And vice versa, when I talk to the startup guys, to think very much like nonprofits and embedding impact and why it's so important and how it can result in greater valuations and multiples and customer retention, etc. They also ask the same question. Well, what are we going to learn from a nonprofit? Well, there's a lot to learn. So having those cross disciplines has been very favorable and worked to my favor. So I very much enjoy it, and I'm consistently learning because I'm in fields that, again, I'm not an expert at, but I get to surround myself around more brilliant people or smarter people than I am.
And you're very adaptable, I think, Mario. That doesn't matter where you are, where you're swimming, if it's in a nonprofit, a startup, or corporate, or investor, or doesn't matter. You're there, and you can adjust, right? I think that's a very octopus nonlinear style as well.
No, I appreciate that. Absolutely. I, I'm fortunate, I'm Venezuelan. I was raised in Venezuela, but I was embedded into globalized thinking and incredible international school. So I absolutely love that when you're surrounded by different religions, nationalities, cultures, identities, perspectives, and so forth. You have your roots, but if you can be adaptable, then again, that's where you have the greatest growth or the greatest outcomes.
Don't you think that the imposter syndrome is something we should celebrate? I'm getting a feeling that most brilliant creators have imposter syndrome because if you don't, then it's not going to work for some reason. And we think about imposter syndrome as something negative, but I start thinking about this as something positive. And since you know so many founders, exit founders, investors, is that something that investors are aware of? That, if someone comes in, I can do it all, and I got it, and I got everything under control, where it seems that the imposter syndrome is far away, is that less attractive than someone who feels that he needs to do the thing that he's doing, but is also always wondering, am I doing a good job?
Oh, absolutely. I think having that imposter syndrome recognizes fear. And if you have that fear, it means that you're extremely courageous. Having that courage is such a virtue because I always tie it very much to perseverance. So you just mentioned something absolutely key. The investor, let's say the investor lens or perspective, is sometimes you can definitely back a founder that might have an incredible amount of experience, skills, talent, what have you. But then you question yourself, okay, that's all absolutely necessary ingredients. What does the perseverance factor look like? That perseverance factor, I tie it in a little bit to those imposter syndromes and to those founders that just have an innate capability of continuing on when things get so challenging. And that's really what any startup is going to be like. I mean, there's the Instagram version, and I'm stealing this from a good friend, Mike Pritchett. If he ever listens, I guess I am stealing your line. But there's like the Instagram version of what we built, kind of what you and I were discussing. Oh, the two exits and going through this incredible journey and creating those companies and so forth. And then there's the real journey, right, of the constant questions, isolation, challenges, imposter syndrome, and so forth. And that is a very windy road. It's difficult, but that perseverance lies within you. So yes, I think it's an absolute virtue to have.
That's cool. I think the Instagram version versus the challenge is huge. Um, is there is there one word of advice? Um, so many people are creating something. You don't have to be a startup founder, right? Whatever it means. But if you're creating something, if you're passionate about maybe in just writing a book or creating an event or whatever, it can be so challenging, and it is challenging because you can think about what you want to do, but the reality is always different. You can hope that people say yes, but they probably will say no. Hmm, is there any advice from you with regards of the challenges and the non-Instagram version of all of us when you're thinking, oh my God, what am I doing?
So I just always fall back to, like the future is being shaped by individuals you haven't met yet. And so when you have that as an ongoing thought process, for example, you are now shaping a lot of my future. We're having this conversation. I haven't met you yet, and all of a sudden, within a month's time, we're doing incredible things together. And so I think that is a very, let's say, rewarding and uplifting uh, thought process. That whatever challenge you're going through, if you're also open to it and you're open to these connections and building these relationships and so forth, you might find that individual that'll come in and potentially either change your life, change your perspective, uh, might just help you through that challenge and so forth. So be an open book in that regard, and you're going to be able to find that path forward. But again, it ultimately comes from these relationships that have been untapped, and we're in the world of builders now. We can build absolutely anything, and so just don't isolate yourself from these conversations that can have a very positive impact in your journey.
It's interesting. We just created a course in the Octopus movement with regards to intelligence. What do you do with your intelligence? Do you use your intelligence to protect yourself, or are you using your intelligence to connect with others? And in many cases, people like to use their intelligence to protect themselves because of trauma, because of bad experience, because of difficulty. And I think, and I've seen many examples, and I've created this model based on all the conversations I've had in the 5 years of the Octopus movement. The ones that are having the most fun in life, let me put it very simply, the ones that are having the best time of their lives are the ones that are using their intelligence to connect, and not the ones that are using their intelligence to protect themselves. And connecting is beautiful. And so I'm happy you're saying this. I cannot agree more. And the other advice, I read that in Mel Robbins' book, Let Them, very popular book, of course. Everybody read it, and she's saying, one, two, three, just do it, right? Just don't think about it. And I think about that so many times, because in so many times you're writing something and then you're thinking, oh, is this good enough? Should this work? And I'm like, no, 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 one, two, three, go. Just do it. Like Nike has a very good one liner. Just do it, right?
I couldn't agree more. There's nothing better than just iterating and getting it out there. I was very protective during my first company. We spent so many months just protective, not showing anything, etc. Incredibly enough, the competition was getting so much more value out of like customer feedback because of the fact that they were putting a mediocre product, but getting a lot more feedback than what we were doing, looking for perfectionism. So, and that applies to all things personally as well. Just get out there, have the conversation. It's not going to hurt as much as you fear anyway.
Yeah. So if if this would be possible, Mario, if you could whisper a sentence in everybody's ear at the same time all over the world in their own language, what would you whisper?
I'd say very much in that same sentiment of what you and I were discussing. Uh, that again, your future, your surroundings are being shaped by incredible individuals that you have to have the courage to go out there and meet. And so, take a moment. I know that we want to be very protective of our time, of our space, but take a moment and go meet somebody new, somebody else, and let them impact your life. You'll have a very positive impact in theirs, but let them impact your life as well. And be vulnerable, and and that'll shape a very positive experience on all fronts. So that's just a little bit of something that's worked for myself, and I'm very grateful for it. And I would suggest others to apply the same.
If you meet the one, I always say it's you only need one. You only need one person who could change everything. You only need one who tells you the right thing at the right moment, that really supports you, where you can have the confidence to move further and farther. And I'm not talking about the one that is your parent. I'm not talking about your spouse. I'm not talking about your best friend. I'm talking about the one is someone you don't know yet and who you meet, and all of a sudden will say something that will change everything. That's very cool.
No,
Quickly, another question, Mario, because we're running out of time. What are you curious about in today's world?
I'm curious as to how this whole AI revolution right now is going to ultimately make us more human. That's a little bit of the lens of where I'm going with this entire tech, which ultimately, right now, there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of fear. It happens when there's obviously an introduction of something that we don't fully understand. But I am very curious as to how it'll ground us and help us be a little bit more human. And that applies to all the causes that we're already facing and organizations in the nonprofit sector, at least, as to what they're working on as well, and just even ourselves within our own entrepreneurial endeavors and ventures and relationships, etc. So I'm curious as to where where this is all leading, which is why, again, meeting somebody like yourself and the way that you're building up this movement, I think it's absolutely pivotal as well, and it gives a lot of, let's say, positivity and a very uplifting energy behind it also.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, Mario, and not just in this podcast, but in the movement as well as a founding member, as a good friend. And if you're listening and you feel a spark, please follow it. Nonlinear thinking is not a strategy, it's a kind of love, it's art, and it grows where we share it. Thank you so much, Mario. See you next time. Thank you
Thank
for
you so
being
much,
here.
Barry. Thanks for having me. Thank you, everybody, for listening as well.
Thank you.